What we're going to talk about here is kind of in some ways how a lot of this comes together, how we've actually engaged with a lot of the folks that you just met. What we're just going to do is talk about and introduce something we're doing on Twitter. It's called the ILoveGay network. And so what is ILoveGay? And so some of you may have seen it, others have not yet, and I'll give you an overview. But here's the deal. In the 90s, it was very common. You'd hear a lot of times where people would be like, oh, you know, print is dead, and internet was, and the craziest part is the internet was like a CB radio, and they said, oh, it's just a phase. We think they're both wrong. But what we really saw was that at first advertisers, everything online was like a value add. Online was not considered primary in terms of what they were looking for in their advertising. It started in print, but over time it started to switch. And for a while, some of the advertisers that were still working with print publications that were out there were starting to find that print became the value add and online became kind of the dominant. The online was just email campaigns, banner ads, and so forth. So in that transition, we think something like that is happening again today. So what we're seeing is that you have some companies in the online space that have that either from print have either adapted. QWERTY's a very strong one in the online space. The Blade is interesting because they're one of those that was very strong in print once upon a time, stayed relevant, and yet migrated very smoothly into the world of online and now social media. And so what you're seeing is the similar type of trend. Online is becoming secondary, and social media is now becoming primary. So while before, and it was just a few years ago, if you did an ad campaign, companies would say, oh, tell me who you're, what are you, where are you on social? As we heard earlier, where are you on MySpace? But then it became Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And over the last few years, social is now starting to become the dominant place that companies are looking towards. And that online is then, so if a company is strong and relevant, whether it's print through online through social, online is now becoming the place where if I do this ad campaign, will you throw in some banner ads as well? So it's really interesting to see this evolution, so to speak. And so, and that's where we say, over that time, some of the people you've heard from earlier this morning, influencers are very strong, but this is where we're talking about our company at this point and showing that ILoveGay, and ILoveGay NYC, and ILoveGay Palm Springs, just for a few examples, are just becoming part of that sandbox, playing in that space. So many of you heard that this morning, and so I'll just rush through that part, just saying, we know that back in the beginning, it was Netscape and Microsoft's browser, and we would bookmark things, and that was our main go-to. And it switched over into search, and search said, don't worry about it, I got you covered. Just let me know what you're looking for, I'll point you there. And then discovery in the world of in Facebook and Twitter and Instagram means that we don't know what we're looking for, but then it becomes very nice and passive. So it's passive, you don't know what you're looking for, versus very active in search. And so, as we talked about earlier, what I was going to dive into is more deeply of exactly the relevance of this. So this is a close-up slide to show what we already know, which is we know where traffic comes from, whether it's bookmarked, social, referral, and so forth. But as I was saying again this morning, the key piece is that the power has shifted. So 10 years ago, when I was creating a site and you would say, oh great, look at my homepage. Homepage was the most important piece you could really put together because that was the entryway into the rest of your content. It's not that way anymore. Now, people are either finding you from a search, because that was the predominant way that over those last almost 20 years now, or over the last 10 years, they've been finding you through social. And social's actually beat out search a few years ago. So through social, they're finding an article. They're finding things, and what is the key to be able to kind of get up front there is to be relevant content that people are engaging with. Something that isn't just posted out there on social, but content that people actually want to share, they want to comment, they want to like. And so this is really, as we were saying before, push the power into the social media and the influencer world and away from the homepage of the site. So taking that a little step further, this is your traditional media model. And for some, they don't want to hear this. And I could annoy others when we start presenting it this way, which is that you've got your audience, and the traditional model as of today, or a few years ago, was you have a media website, you're pushing and saying, oh, here's all my content out through your social channels. And your goal is to drive traffic to your website and then say, oh, we've got this great community and people are spending all this time on this site, which, as I was saying, is probably not the case. And then they're going over to the advertiser. But in today's model, it's very similar, but it's this. And that's what influencers do. So influencers usually are not driving traffic down to the website. Influencers are out there and even The Blade as a media company and so forth. They're all out there speaking about their advertisers in the social media space. They're not looking at it as a driving traffic to their site so much. Now they're saying, let's be relevant up in that space itself. And that space is where social exists. And so these social media conversations are doing the heavy lifting now for how advertisers are being discovered. And I'll show you examples of exactly what that looks like. So I've only got a few of these in here because if I overdo it, I'll drive you crazy. But this is the one I showed earlier because it's important. It's that, how does that work and why? Because on Facebook, it's our training wheels. Our grandparents know how to use it. They wanted to learn how to, they wanted to be able to watch their grandkids growing up, so they kind of felt forced into it. And next thing you know, they're sharing recipes and saying, wow, this is great. Maybe you're not oversharing. The grandparents overshare now. And, but you can only follow 5,000, and it's a two-way relationship. It's two-way, meaning you can't really be connected and pay attention to someone unless they've agreed and said, yeah, I want you to pay attention. I want to pay attention to you back. And so that two-way relationship is key. That's gold. That's how it really works on social media as far as if you want to succeed or not, for most of us at least. And so the business page is an anomaly because that came along after the Facebook groups, and they're always changing their rules as far as where they give preference. But the business page is a one-way street. It's you saying, here's my business, here's my company, or even me as an influencer, here I am, but it's only one way. You're posting things and people can only see you in one direction. The business page is not typically looking at the people that are following it. So when you see it that way, you're like, oh, that's why my personal does so well. Which in this case, that's what I always say. For anybody who is mixing their personal and their business persona, they could do really well. On Facebook, these are just a few examples of people that are in our travel industry. They do very well when it comes to mixing those because they can, but for a lot of us, we can't. It's just not quite right. It's not what we do. So the question then becomes, well, then how can I be relevant when I'm out there if I don't want to merge my Facebook and my Twitter and my LinkedIn and so forth? And so how you do it, you start looking at this, and this is where I was saying, I'll only show this slide because this is the other extreme. This is the other data point, which is Twitter. So Twitter's funny because it's one of those things that at first a lot of people are like, I don't get it. It's a lot of screaming, a lot of politics. It's not really for me. But if you're only looking at Twitter as a one-way relationship and you're just posting and you're saying, I'm posting things and people are not engaging with it, the reason is because you're not turning it into a two-way relationship. So if you start looking at Twitter as, wow, I don't want to just post things, but I'm going to pay attention. I'm going to follow people that are related to my industry and that I want to be engaged with. Next thing you know, everything changes because now you turn the one-way into a two-way. And you've got a relationship that is no longer kind of just non-engaged, but now you're engaged. But the beauty of Twitter is that there's no cap of that 5,000. So on Twitter, you can follow 25,000 and have 25,000 follow you. You can have 1 million and follow 1 million, have 1 million following you. We're not going to have that probably. None of us are quite that exciting, but I shouldn't speak for everybody. But for myself, no. And for most of the things we do in business, it's not that way. But if you realize that two-way relationship in those numbers, the reason I'm saying using the numbers is because LinkedIn is very powerful on the business-to-business side because it upends this a little bit. It's a 30,000. 30,000 is the cap on LinkedIn, but it's a two-way, and that's why it works so well. I mean, for those of you that use it in a B2B capacity, most are finding that it works extremely well. But the company or business page doesn't work as well because it's a one-way. And so Instagram, everyone loves it. We've heard all day, and I will always surrender and say, I am not here to fight it, put it down, or anything. What is important is as a business. As a business, can you make yourself as relevant? Can you go viral? Can you get everything you need to out of it? And some can through either working with influencers or very strong in that space. But Instagram is a funny thing because it's capped at 7,500. So you can only follow 7,500. A lot of people didn't know that because none of us are really following that many people. We're just keeping it to our friends and so forth. But if you use it for business, that 7,500 number kicks in real quick. And the reason that's important is because when you follow somebody, then you're hoping they're going to follow you back. And so there's a lot of tricks that people use in order to be able to make it so that you'll follow them without them having to follow you. And so the fact that you even have to play those games shows that it's a little interesting. It works very well for celebrities or people or others really want to follow. The traveling bum, people like to follow him. So for most of us, we're just not in that category. But if you are, that's fantastic. And so that's where the science of it all kicks in because, again, just going back to two-way relationship and being able to have capacity to reach those kind of numbers. So what we say is we're communicating with the power of storytelling, but now anyone has the opportunity to tell the story. And the power is shifted from the content itself to how people are finding that content, which is conversational mode. And so businesses large and small, are jumping in. We're going to show different examples. You as a company can get your message out there. But from a business's perspective, this is how you're all seeing it. So you're on Facebook and you're like, what can I do? I can use my personal profile we just talked about, or you can use your business profile. And you could do really well if you get away from the idea of free and you pay Facebook to target your exact audience, because they know all about us. So you can reach LGBT travelers who have shown an interest in coming to New York and want to go to World Pride. You can reach those people. That's powerful, but you're paying for it. So then on Instagram, same thing. If you're a business, you can have your brand profile. You can work with influencers. Or you could do the targeted paid advertising as well. And so, and I believe Breeze threw that on the last one, but it's very similar. So the beauty of Facebook owning Instagram is that you have access to the same data. So you can put a really good ad together, targeted to those travelers who want to come to New York City Pride, and you could put all that together and then just click a couple buttons and push that over to Instagram as well, as long as you have a good image. And so next thing you know, that's a great way for businesses to make Instagram work. We're bypassing a lot of the other things, but what you're doing is you're getting a nice book now or learn more. You know, they're really making it relevant. But on Twitter, it's much more organic than that. So from your business perspective, you can create your brand profile. You can work with influencers. You can do paid advertising. Most companies do less paid advertising on Twitter. If somebody's from Twitter, they're going to get mad at me for saying that. But they do less just because Twitter doesn't know as much about us. So you can do some really great targeting, but not quite like what you can do on Facebook. And then where we come in is Twitter media part. Companies that have integrated with Twitter, such as what we're doing with ILoveGay. So the idea is that you're looking at these from either the perspective of, as I was saying, the influencer perspective or from the business. And these are the people we're trying to reach. So what we're trying to reach is, again, Facebook, 1.47 billion, but it's only 5,000 that you can have on your personal site. So most of those billion are untouchable for us. Unless you are on your business page, you've miraculously somehow got a lot of people to engage with you on that, which a few people do, but in general, or you're paying and you're tapping into that 1.47 billion. Or you're shooting for the Instagram numbers or the Twitter. And on Twitter, they've been growing now, and now they're 137 million active daily users. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking for what are the platforms, how many people are really paying attention and using them. So what we say is we want to be a part of that marketing mix. We want to help companies get their messages out there in line. So what we've done is we've created this entire system that's all based upon really focusing on the niche, whether it's ILoveGay movies, just focusing on film and entertainment. ILoveGay India, you know, oddly enough, it's a very powerful profile because they're very engaging on Twitter in India. And so that's how I was able to keep up with what Reverie was up to when they were at the film festival. But it's all structure. And the reason that businesses like Twitter so much when it comes to getting the message out is because not only can you construct your post a lot like Instagram, you're using the hashtags, you're using the @ symbol, but also you've got a call to action. You can put a link to something and have people click on it, while on Instagram you can do that in stories, but not in the traditional news feed. So we're working with destinations, Seattle and so forth, and we're getting ourselves out there and saying, hey, not only here is an article about traveling to Seattle, but now we're featuring an openly gay chef at a restaurant, and just you're able to integrate a lot of these things into an entire story and make it so that it's measurable, it's clickable, it's engaged with, and so forth. And just as I was saying with the niches, so here we are with theater, and here we are destination-wise. And so every one of these, when you start looking at the numbers really reflect exactly how well they do, because there's a certain percentage for every like and comment and engagement. It's about 1% in terms of the number of people saw it versus how many people actually engaged. So for every about 10 likes and retweets, you have about 1,000 impressions. So something like that probably had about 6,000 impressions. And so that's what you're doing, is you're putting these conversations out there, and when you start adding it all up, those 1,000, 5,000, or 10,000 impressions start to really actually mean something. And so we also cover for a lot of the various niche groups. We have I Heart Lesbians, and we follow on QPOC, the Latino market. And each one of them speaks and stays very true to each one of its communities, where it only follows, only retweets, and only posts articles or content that's very, very specific to that market. And so, and also internationally, as we said, with India, Asia, there's a lot going on out there. And what we're doing is we're bringing a lot of these together. And so when something does come up, Reverie going there's a film festival, we have an automatic venue to tap into that and share it with the other followers in our network. And so what are we doing with those? We're sponsoring film festivals, we're sponsoring Outshine and Outfest, and we're getting ourselves out there as far as being able to help work with these events and these companies to be able to kind of tap into the network and get their word out. And again, you could kind of start to see some of the numbers in terms of there. And so the network, the network itself, this is how it works. So when we do either engage with or post a tweet, what we're tapping into is an entire network that is connected. So if something is about theater here in New York, and we post it on ILoveGay Theater, and it's also on ILoveGay New York, next thing you know, we're tapping into both audiences of each one of those profiles, and because they're all connected to each other, we're tapping into the much broader 300,000 followers that are in this network completely. So what we're doing is we're kind of out there in the same sandbox as a lot of the influencers. So now influencers are working with us because they love that kind of attention. And a lot of times when they are focused on Instagram, one of the things we heard this morning was that Kedzie got to work with Visit Philly because he was focused on Twitter, and that was kind of a hole in their visibility. So they hired him just to be able to kind of fill that hole. That's how we met. Kedzie was like, who the heck are you, and why are you, like, you're sharing our stuff from Philly, and it seems to be working. We talked on the phone. Next thing you know, we're going to be doing a lot of projects with them just based upon the fact that these influencers find you. And when people ask us, how do you find influencers in general? I always say, just play in their sandbox. You do this stuff. Next thing you know, you're speaking their same language, and they start to discover you and find you. And they love it when you like and share their content. And so over a short period of time, you get to start to be able to work with these folks. So that's influencers. Now I'm going to deviate slightly. This was, you had sent me this, and it really is applicable to an understanding of how all this works and how we fit in. Influence is an outcome. It's not necessarily a profession. And so once you start looking at that, that's because the world of content creators and journalists, there's a lot of debate that goes on between them about who's doing what. But when you look at it as a business perspective, your goal is just to be able to influence more as a verb than it is as a job. So this is what and I'm just going to breeze through this, but this is really what you're looking for. And I think a lot of this starts to make sense, but when you look at it this way, you start to really see the power of what you're doing, whether it's on Twitter, working with influencers, and so forth. Influence is your audience reach times your brand infinity and strength of relationship. And what does that mean? Audience reach. It's the size of the people you're trying, who are you trying to reach, and how big is that group? But your brand affinity and who you're working with is how tied in, how connected is the person to your brand. So if you're good, your destination is that person that's out there helping work with you, or that company and what have you. Are they in the travel industry, and does their content resonate with the message you want to get out there? And you start to find a nice in-brand affinity. You start to find that companies start to be very well aligned with you and what your messages you're trying to get out. And then, almost most importantly, what is the strength of the relationship? And you can see this right away. You're going to work with anybody. Just look at how many people are liking, commenting, and sharing their stuff. Don't just look at the followers. The followers by itself it's not like Trump says with fake news, but it's a little bit. It's misleading, because you look at it and go, oh, if they got 100,000 followers, they must be popular. But sometimes they have 100,000 followers, but people aren't really paying as much attention to their message. So just take a look and see, are people liking, commenting, and sharing this stuff? Are they doing that with you? Are you engaged? Is your own company, do you have a strong relationship with your audience? And so, but again, the number, I should have put the slide up there, it'd be relevant. I have a slide. The number is, for most of the platforms, 1%. So that means that for every 1,000 people that see a post on Facebook, or Facebook business page, Twitter, and so forth, 1%. So if 1,000 people saw it, that means you saw about 10 likes, or 10 likes. And so you can always tell how well something else is doing just by looking at that. And it's not an exact number, but it's a rough number, except for Instagram. Instagram's 5%. So people say, oh, wow, it's more engaged. And it's true, it's great, it's more engaged. But that also means that for every 1,000 impressions, you had to have 5 times as many. So you had about 50 likes, comments, or shares. So when you have 50, when you see a post, but most get it, it's easy to get 50 likes. But that still shows about 1,000 people saw your post. And so it's starting to understand that. It's a little tricky because Instagram doesn't always tell you how many people see it, but you can get that info, especially when you have a business profile and when you get into the story side. So these are the influencers, tapping into a small subset of the influencers we work with. We actually work with over 100, and we do it just because we started playing in their sandbox. And our network kind of works side by side with a lot of these folks, and this is what it looks like. They post, they tag. So a lot of these folks will just, they're out there. These guys are in Toronto, and they're very strong in the wine, food industry as far as influencers. And they tag us in these things, and they include us. and we'll share through our network. But what they're doing when they include us is they're tapping into our network, and they're trying to ensure that some of our 300,000 followers are going to see them. And it becomes a strong win-win. And we also work with media, like the media we saw here this morning with Metro Source. We work very strongly with Bear World Magazine. Every time they post and tag us in there, they're tapping a little bit more into the network. And it's this whole network effect. It's this whole network effect that if you just post things and you don't tag the right folks that are relevant in your story and you're not that engaged, then you're just not going to have that many impressions. And so this is just a little quick snapshot of just the sort of, here's an event and what they do, as far as how they post. This is a tourism office in Virginia, which we were hearing about earlier, and they've created a profile just for the LGBT tourism, and so they're putting out there all this stuff for drag brunch and so forth. So you're seeing destinations get into it, you're seeing magazines playing in the sandbox. 4 photos is kind of the trick on Twitter when it comes to collaging and making them look as best as they can. Hotels are in this. You notice a lot of it is imagery with people, because that's what folks engage with the most. And I showed this one earlier. These are not influencers. See, they're just people that want to play in that same sandbox as well. But what's interesting, and this is also, I get a lot of this feedback. I talked to the guy from Brazil, and he's like, nah, it's all about Instagram now. And they just had a Sao Paulo Pride, and I promise you, the amount of posts that were like this from people at Sao Paulo Pride, thousands. There's just no way you'd even scratch the surface of seeing them. But what happens is that when you follow their hashtag #ParadaSP, and you're seeing just a snapshot of the most relevant ones, you're amazed. You feel like you're there because so many people are posting these things in a way, and what shows up more towards the top on feeds are those that are engaged with the most. See, it's always going to come back to that. Whatever is engaged with, liked, commented, or shared, starts to rise to the surface. So the more that happens, the more other people see it. So I didn't have to look for Sao Paulo Pride. It just kept showing up on the feed, on some of our feeds, because there was so much going on there. And so that was what was going on here for Dallas Pride. Barefoot Wine, they do the exact same thing. They have discovered how to be able to leverage these things and speak directly to their audience and let their audience know exactly what they're up to for Pride. Lambda Legal, a nonprofit, they all do it. I show Lambda Legal, and I think the next one's HRC. But it's not just HRC, it's HRC in Ohio. So they're following a lot of the same things we're doing with ILoveGay when we have ILoveGay Ohio or ILoveGay Theater. They've realized that the more narrow you speak to your niche and keep it true to the content just for Ohio, the more powerful the relationship will often typically be. So HRC's got a profile for every state and almost every city. They have HRC in Philly, HRC in New York. So you're seeing them all. They're all playing in that exact same sandbox. So it's all measurable. So we're measuring these things on a regular basis, and you're able to see kind of what kind of reach you have and so forth. So when it comes to a hashtag like Palm Springs Pride, next thing you know, you don't just see how many people you're reaching, but you're also able to see how much exposure, impressions, and so forth. It's all measurable. And so this is just a kind of a project that we've done recently with Comcast, and Comcast hired us, said we want to have an influencer come in to our Pride that we're doing at one of our stores, and really just kind of get that out there. But not only that, we want her to be the centerpiece of a lot of what we're doing. So we put it together. We found Dana Piccoli, who was strong at an event some of you may have never heard of called Klexicon. It's a lesbian fandom of all sorts, whether it's gaming, a lot of film and movies that have a strong lesbian content. They all get together in Vegas, and they're probably the strongest lesbian event most people have never even heard of, which shows where the market's going. It's kind of like a RuPaul's Drag Con, but for fan base of lesbians. Dana was there. She had a strong following, and they brought her out to San Francisco.
Welcome to the final episode of Pridecast. I really wanted to do something meaningful around Pride. Pridecast is a 4-part series about the origins of Pride, about people who've never been to Pride and are going for the first time, small town Pride. And then the final episode is the live recording of this podcast here at the Comcast event. I decided to partner with Comcast because I knew that I was going to be working with a company that had a commitment to diversity and inclusion.
So short and sweet, but those are the sort of things. And so what we did is we got that content, we got the story, and then we pushed it out there through all those traditional channels that we've talked about with social. But the big part was that then they actually did all the other stuff too. Targeted on mobile, targeted on Facebook, and also banner ad targeting, all just getting that video and getting that story out there. And the fact that everything we were hearing, especially from Breakthrough Digital and the targeting, is stuff that you were never able to do a few years ago, and now you can. And so we work with a lot of different companies. Whistler Pride doing the same thing. was their pride with celebrities. So in that case, we did get some strong Instagrammers out there. And in the celebrity world, these folks have a TV show on Netflix called Eastsiders TV. Brought them out as well as a few others. Destination's very strong with what we do. Toronto, influencer projects. And we found all these folks just purely through engaged with them on ILoveGay. So we did the same thing here, took their story and got it out there to a much wider audience. And now we've been working with Disney Music this year. They want us to help get their, especially for Pride season, but going through, that's what's important, going through the end of the year, not just June. They want us to help just give more visibility to some of their LGBT music artists out there, what they're doing. So it's all, and you start to see a very strong commonality to everything. It's all the same thing. The post, strong image, using some sort of a key hashtag, and then connecting it up with, there's always a link and a call to action. So now we're doing things with NYC Health. Vakaya, which is a gay cruise going out of New York here in about 6 weeks. And Miami Beach Pride. So Miami Beach Pride actually brought us on as a regular kind of an agency to do not only the social work here through, and they found us purely through ILoveGay, said we want to tap into that. We did so, and had a team on the ground to help them kind of get the message out to a broader audience. But then they asked us to do some targeted banner ads as well. So you're starting to see, at the end of the day, all this stuff sort of comes together in the same, it's we talked about a few things, engagement, being highly engaged, or just making sure your things are, that you're engaging with others, they'll engage with you. But it also goes into targeting. It's all about targeting and being able to get your message out there to a very specific audience, not just kind of throwing it out there to all things gay. And so that's what we do. And then who do we engage with online? We're very strong with T-Mobile lately, where they've asked us to kind of help get their story out there through #UnlimitedPride, because they are very strong in Pride. They get out there on Twitter, and it's something that we can share easily. And so we share it through our networks, and you start to see that they get the message out directly. And TD Bank. So just some of the ones that we engage with and stay very aligned with. So again, performance, everything is measurable. We're showing this because this is just an average daily snapshot of just one of our ILoveGay. It's not that big. It's just, it's just moderate. What we show is that for every post, there's not a single post that we had that had under 1,000 impressions and under a 1% engagement rate. Do we want more? Yeah. When we've had a few posts that, and I'll show you some of that have done higher. But for every one of those posts, that's why we say every conversation that we put out there, we can typically get a pretty decent impression and engagement rate. But what we did is when we were working with Vakaya, we did a lot of work with influencers, much stronger. The influencers have a much larger audience than we do with any one ILoveGay profile. So these folks with the Nomadic Boys pushed their message through their stories, and their stories, everybody was happy with that, but the performance was about the same. So for every one of their stories, they had about 1,000 impressions per story, and you can start to see the engagement, the link clicks, and so forth. We're all in the same kind of general category. So when you're doing this even for yourself, it tells you how well am I doing in comparison to all the other things that are out there. So, but these are just some others that just showed that we can do better. And so what makes those better? Talking about Armistead Melpan, that helps. Posting things that kind of tap into, the first one was Sydney Mardi Gras, #HoldTight. It was a holding hands campaign that they were doing, and that they were in, and I think everybody just loved the fact that a bank was supporting Sydney Mardi Gras. So those ones took off, and they had a higher impression rate and a considerably higher engagement rate. And I say all this, but you can do the exact same thing yourself, but it's something that we're able to help you with as well. So in summary, it's all about your content. So you're getting your content, photos, video, editorial, and it's just got to go somewhere. You want people to know. You want people to know about it. So you're doing either like targeted, whether it's banner ads and so forth, but targeted on Facebook is a very common one. Targeting through social media, through what we're doing on ILoveGay, or just kind of getting the content out there on your own website or working with other websites that can help you do that. And you're able to measure it all. You can measure exactly how well everything is doing. You get a sense of how many impressions you get, what kind of reach you have. And when it comes to social media, you get to see who's talking about me, especially when it comes to a hashtag. So your job, our goal working with you is just to help get your content out there as much as possible and get the sort of numbers that show that you are getting between 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 impressions on your content. Because this is what we're all looking for. You're looking to post something and kind of have that megaphone effect. And you post it and you get a certain number of engagement, but by the time it goes what I call mini viral, we're not all going to go viral. Not many of our posts are all that exciting, but you can go mini viral, where you can get a decent, like 10,000 people seeing a single post, and that's what you want. And so that's what we do. That's who we are. We're a company that integrates all this, this content, gets content in one way, shape, or form, and then pushes it out there, whether it's through banner ads, email campaigns, social PR, and so forth. We're NGLCC certified, and another way of looking at what we do is just looking at this way, content and targeting, the different ways that we get it out there, working with influencers and so forth. And so another way of looking at what we do, just banner advertising, all those things that you see on the left are all access to be different touch points for being able to reach the audience that our clients are looking for. And these are the data points that we're able to tap into. There's thousands of them. So you can actually reach LGBT travelers who have shown an interest in Caribbean cruises. Maybe a small number, but you can do it. And so those things are infinite. And we're able to get them reach people on a variety of devices. And we can reach millions on mobile apps, and we can tap into the billions that are on social media through this kind of targeting. And that's what shows on the right. You can really, really drill down and reach exactly who you're trying to find who you're trying to reach. And from Reverie, here's the stuff we saw as far as some of the audience size that's out there. And these are some of the companies we've worked with. And so that's myself, and that's Fabrice. And so hopefully, we may see you between now and Sunday. We'll have a booth there at Pride as well. And we get out there at these sort of things. And we had sold our company back originally to Here Media, and back in 2006. And Fabrice stayed on with them, and I took off and formed all this. So he got a chance to kind of integrate and work with Advocate and Out and a lot of their growth from print into online. And now we do a lot of things here at Google, working with influencers and doing conferences. And we actually did we were at NASDAQ a few years ago, tied in with one of the conferences we were doing, and got to ring the bell not too long ago. So that's what we want to work with you. So our job, just helping get your message out there, ushering in a more connected, as we say, LGBT world, and that's us. And so I really, again, want to thank you not only for your time for hearing between now and all the presentations today, but hopefully you all were able to learn a few things and come back with a few tidbits of things that you can actually take back for the next level. Thank you.